Welcome. We'll be with you and we'll be starting in just a moment. Thank you very much for joining. This is a conversation of healing and hope in times of hatred. My name is Dr. Debbie Stroman. I'm a professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the founder of Race Realities. And I'm very, very blessed and excited to have two very amazing gentlemen who believe in dignity. They believe in spending time and being intentional in helping those grow, to live the life of purpose, and to give back. And so I don't believe in spending a lot of time providing long introductions. I'm going to put their bios in the chat box and encourage you to do a deeper dive, but they will share with you their life journey. So as you know, online, we try to use technology to represent in-person environments. And so I'm going to ask you to be engaged with us, even though this is a Zoom webinar. And so feel free to make your comments in the chat box, anything that comes to mind, thoughts, as in this is also my experience or someone that I know and someone that I love. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box. We don't want to miss your questions. And I will go through those questions and certainly share them with our two guests today. So welcome, Dr. Sonny Kelly. Welcome, Mr. Matt Jeanius, to the webinar today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Likewise, it's good to see your beautiful faces.
Thank you. Thank you. And so this is very, very much an important topic. In fact, it seems like it's timeless to talk about health and talk about how we heal ourselves with so many internal and external pressures facing us. But today I want to do a deeper dive and being very, very supportive and grateful of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and the Gilling School of Global Public Health. Yes, we are leaders in this space, but we also believe each and every day that we must learn and we must share that information. And so I want to start off by asking you all to share your journeys. How did you get to where you are today? And if you could speak to what you do professionally today. And I'll start off with you, Matt.
Again, thanks for having me. Thank you to all the sponsors and everyone that made it possible for us to be here today. I am grateful to be here. And my journey started, I would say, in high school when I was in a class called Law Studies, and I encountered a terminology that I never heard before. It was learned helplessness. And it piqued, all right. It piqued my interest to learn more about what causes us to show up in the world the way we do. And what learned helplessness is, it's a terminology that describes a person in a situation where they feel and they can't identify the hopelessness and the helplessness of their circumstances, but it's a choice to then stay there longer than they need to. And I was curious from then on about psychology. What got me into the field of marriage and family therapy was being an undergrad. I volunteered at a lot of different spaces, juvenile centers, schools. And when I was at the peak of my undergrad studies, I wanted to then learn more about how I can best help the community that I was most passionate about, which are Black men. And so I was dealing with a lot of younger men from like 12 to 18 and at the juvenile center. And I wanted to find the best space to then enter into their lives to make the best type of intervention. And so I thought about child psychology, developmental psych, school psychology. And then when I came upon marriage and family therapy, it really helped me see myself in a way that I never saw myself before. It opened up the idea of systems and then transgenerational issues. And then it made sense for me how I became the person I became. And it allowed me to see some of the remedies that were available to me looking at myself in a different lens. And so currently what I do and how I serve is that I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist that specializes in Black male wellness and also a person that specializes in relational intimacy, which I think speaks on the journey that got me here, seeing a lot of the different young men at the juvenile centers and high schools and questioning myself, like, how did they get there? And then also seeing some of the personal implications in my life, my own brother, myself, some of my close friends, and some of the mistakes we've made as young men, and asking myself, how did we get here? And so the answer came very clear when I started studying family therapy. And then the last but very personal reason for me dedicating, I guess, my focus to Black male wellness is that I lost a good friend of mine in my doctoral program. When I started my doctoral program at Nova Southeastern University, to suicide. He completed suicide at the end of my first semester in my PhD program, and I never had the opportunity to go back and complete. It derailed me. And when I got my own mental health uh, better is when I was able to then come back and specifically focus on Black male wellness. And so that's the short version of where I am now and how I got here.
And Matt, can you share where you practice? Where you-
Sure.
Mhm.
I'm currently in the state of Georgia in Atlanta. I have a license here in the state of Georgia and a license in the state of Florida as well. I also travel. I, co-director for Race Realities, a retreat designed by Black men for Black men, for men of color. I also do virtual workshops, trainings all over the country. And I guess that's it.
That's wonderful. And I'm so, so grateful to you and to Dr. Kelly for your work with Race Realities Costa, which we'll speak more about. Dr. Kelly, your journey.
I'm also glad to be an RR representative here as well. But my journey started back in California in the 70s. I won't say what year. I'm getting to that point now where you don't ask a gentleman about his age. But I was a little brother, and much like Matt's entree into this work of mental health and advocating for men and especially men of color, I grew up with men in my house, two big brothers and my father, and some things functional, some things dysfunctional. But I can tell you this, that there was a lot of animosity between my brothers and me. I was always the youngest, so I was always silenced. So I learned to talk fast and loud. So I'm going to ask you for forgiveness right now if I'm too loud or I'm too fast. It's because I learned to get a word in edgewise. I really had to be dynamic, and that actually made me bloom and blossom as a speaker and as an actor. So I grew up in the Los Angeles area, Orange County, really, and started doing some childhood acting. And I thought I might be an actor, but then I went off to Stanford University for college and studied international relations with an ROTC, Air Force ROTC scholarship. So I went into the Air Force. And so my life took several turns, but I always found that the gift of gab was able to talk me out of things and into things. And so I became an intelligence officer, and I was stationed here in North Carolina at Fort Bragg. And at that time, I learned the importance of speaking up, but also speaking with temperance and understanding when you're within systems, certain systems and structures, especially hierarchical ones, you have to find a way to be heard and to advocate for people and stand for and with people and in ways that are creative and more effective. And so I learned to be quieter and to adjust, but never to hide or lose who I was. And so it was an ironic thing. Being in a military uniform, you become this one band, one sound entity. I'm an Air Force officer, but at the same time, I felt that I was able to be more of myself in some ways because I had this authority as a captain in the Air Force to say and do and call the shots in ways I never could as a little brother. So I learned how to wield power with responsibility. And while I was doing that, I got involved with mentoring. And all through college, I was always interested in mentoring, but I really wasn't sure about how to enter into it. Well, I got a mentor when I was an Air Force officer here in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I started working with a program called Find a Friend, which is a program that works with mostly low wealth children and communities where they have several challenges, socioeconomic challenges, academic challenges, etc. And they look to match the children, especially boys, with men who are willing to volunteer. So I was an officer in the Air Force here. I found out about it. I joined up with the program, fell in love with it. And when I got out of the military, I started working for Find a Friend. So I started working for a nonprofit as my first civilian job and fell in love with this idea of connecting men to boys and adults to kids in ways that would build them up and help them to model healthy communication and model positive aspirations. And from there, my wife got stationed in San Antonio. I was a military spouse, so I had to learn how to live on the other side of it now. And we were in San Antonio for about 8 years. And I became a pharmaceutical sales rep, a college admissions counselor, and finally a youth pastor. And that's when really God touched my heart. And I learned the power of operating within the channels of faith, and even in the religious setting, within the four walls of the church, to bust out of those four walls, to let people know that there is salvation, but there's also redemption, and there is recovery, and there is connection through faith and through a brotherhood and sisterhood of faith. Oftentimes we don't do it right, especially in what we call the Black church, but there are some nuggets there. There's some heritage that really should and can be passed on toward the legacy, toward the next generation. So I learned the power of teaching and learning our traditions and believing and hoping in those things that we cannot see. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So long story short, my heart and my mind drew me to teaching. My father was a high school teacher, never wanted to be one, but I got this gift of gab, and I love kids, put them together. And I love young people in general. So I started pursuing my PhD at UNC Chapel Hill in 2015. That's where I met the inimitable, the incomparable Dr. Deborah Stroman when I was learning about race and how race impacts all of these elements of socioeconomic challenges that we see in life. And I learned how to just analyze, some would say critically analyze, how race and how difference and marginalization happen, and how we as teachers have such a great responsibility to lift people up and out and through, but also to acknowledge what we're in and how we need to change the systems and structures as well as empower the individuals. So now I got my PhD in 2020, and I am here at Fayetteville Technical Community College, where I teach interpersonal communication, intercultural communication, and public speaking. Some would say Americans' worst fear, but I'm glad to help them press into that fear and encourage them to speak better and to speak well and more. So I'm also a coach. I coach people in positive self-concept, positive self-talk, public speaking. I'm also a youth pastor at my church, One Church Covenant Fellowship, right in downtown Fayetteville, where my wife Elaine and I work together as co-youth pastors, empowering, educating, engaging young people and enlivening their faith. And so glad to be here with you all.
Well, hopefully you all can see why I'm so excited about Dr. Kelly and Mr. Matt Jeanius in terms of their work with Race Realities Costa. Race Realities Costa is a retreat, a men's retreat for brown and Black men, where we spend a week in beautiful Coweta, Costa Rica, and we do everything that these gentlemen spoke of. So let's talk about how you guide and how you share. You know, we often talk about mentorship, and I'm a big, big proponent of mentorship, but there are other ways, right? There's coaching, there's mentorship, there's sponsorship. Now, we don't have time today to talk about all of them in great detail, but what I do share with people is that coaching is talking to someone, talking to someone. And then mentorship is talking with someone. And sponsorship, and especially if you are an adult, a professional trying to move up the ranks, sponsorship is the most important, because that is someone talking about you, as in we can't be everywhere. And so you need a sponsor, generally someone at a higher level than yourself, who is going to tell your story for you. And then they lift you up into that next level. So I'm going to ask both of you to please respond to the mentors in your life, the coaches in your life, the sponsors in your life, who helped you to arrive to where you are today. Dr. Kelly?
Wow, I instantly think of my father. I don't mean to sound cliche, but I had a dad who doted over me and my brothers and loved us in a way that was not perfect at all. He was busy and he worked and he was always hustling. But I remember when he would take us to campus. He was a high school teacher at Dominguez High School, Compton, California, tough school, relatively speaking. And he would bring us boldly onto that campus to meet his students. And he was so proud to introduce his children. And you talk about that last part of how we can champion people and how we can be their patron or their sponsor. My father showed me the power of sponsorship early in the game. He spoke to people about me in such a high and lofty way when I was just a little boy that he made me think I was something and that I came from something, because he told everybody about it. And he was my hero. So to have my hero telling other people that I was a great kid and I was really smart and I was going to be something in the world, even though I had no idea what I was going to be, that meant a lot. And so I think just having my father there, being as consistent as he was, as doting and loving as he was, really made me understand the power of having an elder in your community who takes the time to not only see you, but then tell other people about you and what they see. And I will say, besides that, the other mentor that comes to my mind is a man called Granddaddy Junebug, Mitch Capel. Mitch Capel is a great storyteller, and he got me in this business of telling stories and speaking to people. And he said to me a long time ago, we were doing a play together here at Cape Fear Regional Theater, and he said, "You think you're an actor, but you're really a storyteller." I didn't really know what he meant by that, but what I learned was there's so much more that you can get out of storytelling, engaging people, whether it's one on one or small group or even on a stage, than just memorizing a script. And so, a lot of what I do in terms of connecting to people and encouraging them, empowering them, coaching them, is telling stories and listening to their stories. So, I got to give a shout out to Mitch Capel because he really is a great storyteller, but he's let me know I too am one of the griots of our people, and we all are in our own way, but we've got to use our gift in their own respective places and spaces. And so storytelling is my segue to connect to hearts and minds of people. And I was taught that by a mentor.
Wonderful. Very effective tool. Matt?
I have to go back to high school. My band director was one of my first mentors, and he's this towering figure. His name is Dr. Shelby Chipman, and he's the band director of Florida A&M Marching 100 currently. But he's my high school band director, and he had tough love for all his students, but he did it in a way to where we felt seen by him. You know, he would leave the comfort of his home, his car, his community, and he would come into our communities and would meet with us and would speak with us and would get to know our parents. And he took us all over the country in high school. We were able to go and participate in the Macy's Day Parade, one of the first all Black high schools to march in the Macy's Day Parade. We were able to go to Indianapolis to participate in Bands of America, one of the first symphonic bands from an inner city high school to participate and that. And then he made sure that most, if not all of us, had scholarships to college. And that was my first time even considering going to college because of Dr. Shelby Chipman. And so from there, some of my mentors were in the psychology department at Oakwood University, where I was an underdog because I was a returning student. I was at Florida A&M doing well, but I was dealing with anxiety and depression there and didn't know how to address it. And so I was out of school for quite some time, maybe 2, 3 years. And then when I got back in school, got my associates at Tallahassee Community College, I wound up at a small HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama called Oakwood University, where the psychology department was exactly what I needed. I met Dr. Weems there. He was the psychology department chair, and this brother was thorough, right? He was very intelligent, but he's also very personal. He invited myself along with several other students to his home where he would, give us even more tips and tricks about being professional, but also having success in life. And then, of course, there was another professor there, Dr. Cheryl Galley, who's now an ancestor, and she was just the heart of that department. She believed in every single one of us. She took the time to sit with us, to point us in the right directions, to make sure we had an idea of what we wanted to do after we graduated. Dr. Cheryl Galley, every time I think about her, it makes me smile because she was one of the very few people that believed in me and saw something in me that I probably didn't see in myself. And currently, I have a sponsor by the name of Dr. David Daniels. He's uh, one of the foremost individuals in the United States that talks about psychological health and safety. And I met him when I moved to Atlanta, and we meet probably 3 times, a year. But when we meet, it's so powerful what he pours into myself and someone else that he is sponsoring as well. But I learned and I gained so much from him. And I think the best part about having these individuals see something in me that I didn't see in myself or never heard from other individuals in my life is that it sparked something for me to then see it not just in me, but in others that are on my level and that are up and coming as well. And so I'm a mentor and I'm also a sponsor as well for others that are in the field that would like to do more than just become a therapist or someone that just works in the clinical field of mental health. We do so much more. Dr. David Daniels is a author. He wrote the book on psychological health and safety that is doing very well now. Dr. Weems also, he was a chaplain as well. And so just having these individuals change the trajectory of my life in the best way possible. He actually did my wedding as well. I forgot to mention that. Dr. Weems was the officiant to my wife and I's uh, union. And so these people didn't just see me, they lifted me to a level that I would have never seen before. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask the participants to engage in this question as well, use the chat box. But I want to ask our speakers today to identify what are the barriers, what are the challenges. I was very intentional in naming this event today is something that we can discuss in times of hatred. So what are the barriers? What are the challenges? What's going on in the climate in this country today that would have men have to be intentional in terms of their healing? And before we go to solutions and resources and services available, but what are the pressures? So people who are participating, feel free to put that in the chat box, but then we're also going to hear from our speakers.
Well, I have a pressing thought about that, Matt. I appreciate you sharing the names of all those mentors. As you were speaking, I was thinking, oh yeah, and there's this one and that one. I want to add that a lot of females like you, Dr. Stroman, have been our mentors. My advisor at UNC Chapel Hill, Dr. Renee Alexander Kraft, an amazing artist, creator, writer, scholar, she would always push us. She would push me specifically. And she would ask me this question after I would present some piece of work to her, whether it was artistic or prose, writing or a critical thought, she would say, what is that doing in the world, Sonny? And I think one challenge that we have is that we, not all of us, because we're not a monolith, but I think oftentimes I see a trend amongst my brothers, people who are of African descent, who are males, male identifying, is that we feel the need to impress before we think about the impact that it's going to make. We want to dress the part, look the part, make sure we don't lose face, make sure that we're not embarrassed. Meanwhile, the impact that we can make on the person in front of us by loving them, encouraging them, being strong in our vulnerability can be lost because we're so busy trying to do the face work. And I really appreciate her asking me that question because now I ask my students that question. Okay, that's great. That was a great speech. You have a wonderful point. You're a brilliant mind. What do you want to do in the world? And what is your work going to do in the world? I think oftentimes I get around brothers and there's a lack of purpose. There's a lot of energy. There are a lot of resources, a lot of, preparation and sometimes training, but rarely do we stop and think about what legacy we're going to leave and what impact we're making on this room right now. A lot of thermometers instead of thermostats, right? We can tell you, hey, I'm gonna match your energy, but can you set the tone in the room and think about the long-term game and how we can all be better off if we adjust the energy towards something sustainable?
Wow, that is powerful. We could stay there for a while. So I will transition us with setting the tone in the room. What are the factors in that room that will prevent someone from doing such? So what
Yeah.
are those barriers? What are those challenges? Mr. Jeanius.
You know, I have to really think about what has been happening to a lot of my male clients. And the awakening that they're having is that the system is flawed, right? The system is flawed. This matrix that we live in, the rules, the formula is incomplete. And so you have individuals that have followed the rules their entire lives. They went to school, got the grades, graduated from high school, went to college, finished college, got the job, went to grad school, got the master's. Some even went to the PhD level, got married, children, and still their souls are unsatisfied. And so I think some of the barriers are the rules weren't necessarily written for us. You enter into a system where you're participating and you're feeling unseen, you're feeling devalued, you're feeling depleted. We give so much and yet to receive so little. And it does something to the individual to where it starts to create disassociation. Like, I really don't enjoy being here. And that's life, right? When you think about what we do, when you think about what we earn, all these things still can't satisfy that yearning of the soul that a lot of men have. And I think it's a part of us learning then how to break those rules, to then make space for us, to then create a pathway for our souls to be filled. But you said we can talk about the resolutions in a minute, but I think the formula is incomplete, is the short answer.
Wow. Sonny?
Yeah, I am constantly challenged by this tension that I dance between, and sometimes I misstep when I speak because I have a certain level of privilege. I speak the way I do. I was raised in the suburbs of Orange County, California. I'm lighter skinned than most people of African descent that I know. I say I'm a B plus in terms of attractive. You know, I'm a cute guy, 6 feet tall. You know, educated, right? And so life has been easier for me than it has for many of my brothers. So sometimes I'll say, "Hey, y'all, we got to come into this situation with a positive mindset. We can start our own thing, right? If they won't pull up a seat at the table, we'll start our own table." And I'm talking to people who haven't had the privileges that I've had, and they look at me and say, "Bro, you don't even know what I've gone through. I have to first get my mind even right to think that I can belong here, much less start to move. And then when I start to move, there's all kinds of levels of discrimination, colorism within the Black community, all these barriers." So the tension that I have to deal with, and we all need to deal with, is the fact that there is hope and there's hardship at the same time. How do we navigate that both end, right? I oftentimes will say this story. When I went onto the campus of UNC Chapel Hill, built back in 1789 by our ancestors, right, by enslaved people, I would walk across Franklin Street, which is the northernmost boundary or barrier border of the school, and I would look at Silent Sam, who was then up, but is not now, but it's a Confederate statue. And I would look at that statue, and I would be disgusted that I go to a school where they would put up a Confederate statue, a person who literally fought to keep my people in shackles. And I started to reframe that so I could reclaim some positivity. So I acknowledged the hardship, but then I said, "You know what, Silent Sam, you lost." And I would walk with my head up high past that statue. And I would even take my sons, Sterling and Langston, and I'd stop at that statue and say, "Hey guys, he lost. He couldn't prevent us. Your daddy's getting a PhD here, and you're going to do greater than me." Because people like that tried to stop and they tried to enshrine it. They tried to build a structure, but we're going to break out of this structure. I know it sometimes seems like rose colored glasses, but somebody's got to step up and take that chance to get out of the box and to make a difference and to walk in hope. And you will fall on your face and you will face discrimination and there will be challenges. But if we can come together, and again, I don't want to get into solutions, but if we can come together and actually encourage each other to take a chance, to take the hit, to fail forward, I feel like we'll be getting the traction that we need to acknowledge the structures and that we were not meant to fit into, and rebuild them, remold them, reframe them, and reclaim them, as I like to say.
Wow. This is so, so powerful. Someone placed in the chat box about the generational piece. So, can you speak to the challenges or barriers that might exist for a young Black man and what might exist for a senior or elderly Black man? What types of challenges and barriers are men faced with?
You know, sometimes people may not consider how generational trauma exists within the communities that we serve. And that looks all different types of ways, right? You have situations where the father may be present, but his father may have been absent. And so his presence is still an absence because he doesn't have the intangibles to then give to his sons or daughters because he didn't receive it. And so when you look back, sometimes it's empathy, but sometimes it's anger. Like, I wish I could have had a different relationship with my father in order to then have a better relationship with my sons and daughters. And so I think sometimes we don't make the space to understand what's happening in different generations. When I used to look back at my father, all I had was anger for him. All I had was disgust. And so much so that I hated my own face because I looked like him. And if I can hate my face, then how am I going to then love the face that comes out looking like my face? Right. And so, in the process of healing my own love for myself, I was able to then create a space to then love my father, even though he still may not have all the tools, all the love, all the joy to give me. It doesn't prevent me from then giving that love back to him, which I thought they were mutually exclusive, meaning if you don't love me, I don't love you. Or if you don't have love to give me, I don't have love to give you. But then that that it kills something inside of us that then goes to the next generation and the next generation. And so I think sometimes we have to really look at the broader picture of what happened to the generation before us. And then when you look deeper, you will clearly see there's a lot that happened. And then to look at this generation of parents, of fathers, of men, you have to understand what they've been through because they inherit a lot of that trauma from their fathers. But the difference is we have more tools now. And I have been seeing a shift in a lot of my brothers, a lot of my friends, and a lot of the people that I serve that are tired of being overwhelmed with emotions that they can't control or emotions that they can't express or thoughts that they feel are overwhelming, where they're finding spaces to then talk about the anger that they hold on to because of a father that was abusive and the sadness that they hold on to because of a parent that didn't believe in them and the anger that they project on their loved ones because they don't have anywhere else to project it. And so when I look at what's happening transgenerationally, I can say that I'm more thrilled now because in the healing of one generation, it goes backwards and forwards, right? And so in my healing and me getting my mind right and me clearing my heart to then say I can love more, it allowed me to be a better father to my kids. But in that process, it also allowed me to make space for my father so that he can have a relationship with my kids that I never had. And when I see them interact, it's just like, this is what it's all about, right? Them having access to a healthier grandfather, them having access to a father that can look back and love his father, them having access to both generations as we still work through some of those hard and difficult traumatic situations that got us to this very point. And so I'm hopeful when I look back or when I look at, the circumstances of a generational patterns of what's happening in our community.
Matt, can I
Thank
just
you.
say that I'm so glad that you came to terms with loving your daddy and yourself because you are one of the most present and loving fathers that I've ever seen. And all your kids look like you. As down here in Fayetteville, we say it's like he said patooey, and there was all seven of them, just like
Exactly. And so that's one of the cheat codes. There was an article written called The Ghost in the Nursery years ago that talked about how the presence of an unhealthy parent is also the presence of their parents, and so you're talking about two generations in the nursery room based on the unhealthy patterns of the previous generation. But the article didn't end there. It also talks about the angels in the nursery, which then talks about the healing you can have in yourself that then creates a different pattern of interaction with your children that also can then feed the wound, the hole that was gaped from not receiving the love that you never received from your parents in loving your kids. And so I'm privileged to have seven that I can love on and they can love on me and I can spread that love out to all that I encounter.
And
I
you do
love
that so well. So we could not address systemic racism and how that lands on everyone. But today we're talking about men's health. Can you speak to those challenges and barriers around systemic racism?
I will just say that systemic racism has emasculated the black man for centuries. At first in overt and overtly violent and physical ways, and then later in more subtle ways. That notion I mentioned earlier about the pressure to impress rather to impact has been born of systemic racism. This force that says that unless you have money, unless you have the kind of clout that society says you should have, then you're nothing. And so, this notion of challenging a man to provide and to present his worth in what he has and in his strength, but at the same time, secretly sabotaging every effort that he could possibly make to grow in wealth or to even grow in health, that puts us into a vice, so to speak. And I feel like men, but especially black men, men of color, have been placed into this vice where the argument is, well, if a man doesn't work, he doesn't eat. You need to provide for your family. But at the same time, you create laws and protocols and even understandings that say that, well, we're not going to hire you because of fill in the blank, right? Or we're going to criminalize your activity and we are going to problematize your physical nature in class. We all know we're physical learners. All of us who are teachers, we learn through the eyes, the ears, and kinesthetically through doing. Well, Black children, especially traditionally, because of our cultural traditions, have been an oral tradition people, a physical, moving, active, engaged people. Even introverted people will tap their toes, right? And I don't mean to speak in stereotypes, but I'm just saying traditionally, part of our culture and what we brought to this continent was an enlivened way of being, right? And so there's a reason why we call it an amen corner. Amen, right? We call and response. Well, the way we have traditionally learned has been call and response. But when you get into a classroom that says, I call, you receive, you shut your mouth, you don't move. And if you move, you now become hyper vigilized, if I can say that. Hyper vigilance lands upon you, right? And you become hyper policed. And so what happens is from a very young age, and studies have shown this continually, people in America of all different races tend to see Black children as 3 to 5 years older than they really are. So they adultify them. And then they also tend to perceive any physical activity, any kind of anything that's out of the norm, that is a different rhythm or flow than what is in the classroom or in the learning space, as a problem and as a disruption, as opposed to a way of digestion. We're just trying to digest. And I'm not saying that every problem child or problem student is just, a perfect angel. But what I am saying is that so often Black people, especially Black boys from a very young age, are misrecognized as problem children. And that misrecognition turns into negative self-concept, turns into self-fulfilling prophecy, turns into the teachers and educators and people in power themselves taking on a confirmation bias. And we create in our own minds these bogeymen. We create bad kids, so to speak, in our perception. And then when they get punished or they get stopped and frisked, or they get criminalized in some way, shape, or form simply for having a hood or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, we blame it on them. We as a society, because of racism, are great at victim blaming, right? And so what you see is you have a young man who's pulled over by the police, and if he's a Black man, and I can tell you this, I thought this subconsciously myself. I've had to retrain myself. If he's a Black man, I wonder, what did he do? That's the first question I have. If he were a white man or something else, I might wonder what's going on over there. So we, as a society, we have internalized and processed this racism that lands on the bodies of our young people, especially our young men. And much like Matt said earlier, when a man feels that his whole life, he doesn't feel like that he can get past that. It becomes this impenetrable force around you that makes you think, I'll either participate and maybe get hurt or criminalized or controlled, or I'll just back up out of this because this place wasn't made for me. And so it's this a problem with racism and how we deal with it in our society is it gets perpetuated and it's ever more subtle. So you can't quite point it out. You just know it. You feel it in your gut and you know you don't belong there. Well, if I don't belong there, I won't go. But that's where the impact is. That's where the blessings are. That's where growth is. But how will I know that I can break out of the box unless I have someone model it for me? I have someone advocate with me, ally with me, stand up and clarify that this is not the way it's supposed to be and it's not the way it has to be. And to be honest, be vulnerable and say, it's happened to me and I've done it to other people as well. And we all got to do better, right?
Yes. Matt?
Wow, that was really powerful, Dr. Sonny. Um, Honestly, when I think about systemic racism, what comes to mind is Dr. Joy DeGruy's work of what's it called, the post-traumatic slave syndrome. And very early on in the book, she talks about how we as a people of African descent have developed this nature of hatred towards ourselves, right? And so I'm going to cut through all of that and get to the meat of it. I believe that a part of what systemic racism has done to us was allowed us to minimize our joy. When it's almost like there's a joy police somewhere, starting from elementary school to even in the workspace, where when you see people of color having fun, there's always someone wagging the finger like you're making too much noise, or your colors are too bright, or you're singing too loud, or your claps are just, why are you playing the drums, or why are you dancing, or why are you smiling? To the point where we do it to each other. Like we can't see another person win and be satisfied with that. Other people's joy offend us. And it's because we are still in the mindset of policing and minimizing what we can experience in this great nation, right? We feel that we have to dim our light. like I can't be me. I fully can't be me in certain spaces because if I am fully me, then my joy, my love, my light will offend someone. And so a lot of us have to turn it down. We wake up in the morning feeling brighter than ever, but by the time we get to work, by the time we get to school, by the time we have to stop at a red light, it's already then dialed down, right? And so a part of it is, of course, imposed, but a part of it is what we've inherited to then become the person that police ourselves. Am I being too loud, right? Am I speaking out of turn? Am I smiling too bright? Am I wearing the right attire? You know, and so we always have to realign ourselves in this space that, like I said, the formula is broken, and it saddens me, but in this space, I think a part of breaking that mold is to not let your joy offend anyone around you, even your spouse, even your kids, you know, and so find that joy. One quick story: I was in the backyard with my son. I can say that now, yay! Um, and he was blowing, well, I was blowing bubbles, and he was on the ground, coloring with all these different colors, and he said, "Dad, I made a rainbow," right? And I saw this bright young man having such a great time on the floor, just using these chalk colored, you know, making all these designs, and I'm just blowing bubbles at him. And the back of my mind, something said, "That's gay," right? Like to minimize it. And I'm like, nah, I won't let that become the story of this moment. I love that moment, and I captured it. I took a picture of my son on the floor, took a picture of that rainbow, and I'm like, I'm gonna cherish this forever because this is the privilege that I never had in my life to actually be free to blow bubbles in my backyard, Sonny, to actually see my son color a rainbow and feel proud to show his father. I didn't have that privilege. My dad didn't afford that to me. When we were having fun, it was offensive to him, right? And then when I'd go to school, when we were too loud, it was offensive to the teacher. And then when I work at a specific space, when the people of African descent got together, we'd start singing and making, "Oh, you're too loud," bring it down. So our joy is always on the radar of someone else to then be offensive to them, you know? And I want to free our joy. I want us to live in a space where we can be joyous in every occasion and not let our joy offend anyone around us.
That's so beautiful. I gotta just put a piece of language that Resmaa Menakem wrote a book called My Grandmother's Hands. And he talks about this phenomenon called somatic abolition, how we've got to free our bodies to have joy, to process stress, and to transcend. Amen. Yes, I touch and agree.
Wow, such a powerful conversation. I have so many thoughts in my mind. I'm so glad, Matt, you brought up the idea of being soft. That is just so disturbing to think that a man would be considered soft and not be a man. I'm also thinking about, you know, what does a holistic, healthy man look like? And it's the three P's: the priest, the protector, and the provider. The priest, as in the household or for the people that he serves and loves, is someone who has a connection to a creator, however you might define that, but as in respect for your actions. And then being a protector, knowing that, again, in the household, that the children, the spouse, the partner would feel that they're not alone, that that person, that protector would stand up. And then lastly, it's the provider. And I think you both mentioned that this is where it can be really dangerous because oftentimes men will feel it's all about providing versus being in partnership with someone, collaborating with someone, and working together, and not feeling that you have this heavy, heavy weight of financial matters, economic matters on their shoulders. So thank you for what you all lifted up. And when I think about these barriers, I think about how much men suffer in silence and how there's something to be said around community. And we talk so much about self-care, and I've made sure that I've added in my language to always mention community care because that's where the healing is. And so let's transition to how you all heal yourselves. What does healing mean to you? What does it look like? And again, feel free to put your thoughts in the chat box. And also, if you have any questions for these gentlemen, we're going to go to Q&A in just a moment. So what does healing look like for you?
I'm going to try to tie together that concept of the conversation between the generations along with healing. I think because Matt and I, we're in this generation where we have our parents are still with us. They're in their 70s and 80s, and we have our younger children. We live in the middle, and we have a particular privileged view or standpoint. I think that healing means two things for me in that context. When I look at my younger generation and I see my son is a brooding teenager in many ways. And so he does not, he doesn't like to talk about his feelings all the time. He's 17 years old, and I get that. He's trying to be independent. But what he will do is he will come to my bedroom at midnight or some time when it's not really convenient, and he will literally sit down on my bed and talk to me about some issue that's concerning him. And so what that teaches me is that for his generation, they need us to be available whenever they're ready. And it seems a little bit unrealistic and unfair, but just like the media, the social media and all that kind of stuff is always ready, we need to be more ready for them. So availability. So health for me means being available to ask for help and to give the help, even if it's inconvenient. And then when I look at the older generation, I think about my father in love, my wife's father. I always have this picture of him. He's a pastor, retired pastor of a church. But I remember when I was in my 20s, I met him. He would be on his all fours with a suit on, scrubbing the rug in the church. Not with any frustration, not with any sense of martyrdom. That's what a priest does, right? And I remember looking at him and thinking to myself, am I enough man to do that? And I think that not only that faithfulness and that consistency of serving and doing what you're supposed to do and being where you're supposed to be can be healthy, but also it's a model for other people. So what I've taken from that is I try to serve on a regular basis. I try to be where I'm supposed to be, because when I'm following these simple, consistent, repeatable rhythms in my life of faithfulness and service, it's actually health to me. I know where I'm supposed to be, and I'm there, and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that gives me a sense of fulfillment and ease. The bishop of my church, Bishop John Gabo, my pastor's big brother, he once said, "When you're not in place, when you're in the wrong place, your right place is empty. When you're in the wrong place, your right place is empty." So it feels good to be in the right place where you're supposed to be, making impact, being consistent and faithful. One of my favorite scriptures is, "Every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father of lights, in whom there's no variation, no shadow of turning." I think we were made in an image of a creative mind, a God who is faithful and consistent. So when we wake up on a regular basis, we get the sleep we need, we eat regularly, we spend time with our family on a regular basis, we have rhythms, and we have systems in our household that can flow. They'll change sometimes, but we have consistency. There's health and consistency. So those are the two things I'm learning from the young people. There's health and availability, asking for help and receiving for help, even when it's inconvenient. You're never a burden to me, brother. You ain't heavy, my brother. And then inconsistency, showing up on time when you're supposed to be there, serving the way you're supposed to serve to the best of your ability. Bring health to those who operate in those
Hmm. That's a heavy question, Doc. You know, to ask, what does our healing look like, or what could it start with? For me, it's a space where it's very selfish. It's the space where I started to write my own story. And I took the pen from all the other authors that were writing what they thought my happiness, my joy, my healing was for me. And when I started to do that, then it allowed me a level of freedom to offend a lot of people, right? It allowed me to be selfish enough to consider my own mind. It allowed me the courage to then consider my own heart. It allowed me to feel things that I suppressed for years. It allowed me to have a chance to be in silence. It allowed me a chance to be angry and be okay with my anger and not have to rush it away because it's offensive to somebody. It allowed me to think my own thoughts. It allowed me the courage to then design my wellness for myself. And that process is ongoing. I'm still developing the mind that's brave enough to heal in real time. Meaning sometimes I may just be zoned out because I see a butterfly, right? And that butterfly is a part of my healing because it brings me joy, and it feeds my curiosity and it reveals God to me. But in this process of me living in this matrix and not participating the way other people may be comfortable, then it starts to create friction. And I'm okay with that now. I'm okay with the friction that produces the freedom of the journey of healing that I'm on right now. And I encourage a lot more men to join in this freedom of defining what healing is for you, defining what wellness is for you, defining what a safe and healthy mind, a balanced heart, a thriving soul is for you, and then design it every day, redesign it every day, wake up and create something new every day. And
Wow.
I promise you, it gets better.
Yes. Yes, it does. And so, with the intentionality of having retreats for men of color in Costa Rica, for me, not only was it divine, or I should say, and it was divine in the sense of nature, biomimicry. So, if you could both speak on how nature moves you, what does it mean to you, and your growth in this space around nature and healing?
I'll let Matt finish this one because we call him Nature Boy whenever we're out
Yes.
in Cahuita, Costa Rica, because he is has such a beautiful way of responding to nature like a child in a way that I actually aspire to do more of. I will just say this: being in a place where you are at home away from your comforts of home. And in this undomesticated atmosphere, it reminds you that we are from nature. We create these houses and we get, pest control and we get glass and water, and mortar and bricks and everything to separate us. But we were meant to be out there with these things. So when you see a three-toed sloth just going by, that's normal. That's supposed to be the case. You're supposed to see these things. So to see nature come up close and personal with you and to tell yourself not to panic but to be in the flow, to wake up and see the sunrise over the ocean and to dig your toes into the sand and just feel the flow of nature and know you are part of it is so indeed divine. It's also empowering. Back to what Matt was saying about being honest with yourself. I think a really big part of what makes what we do with race realities in Cahuita, Costa Rica so effective is the fact that we are trying to release all the fetters that society and racism and our own self-concept and our own sense of performance put upon us and just be out in nature and be with your brothers and be vulnerable and be unsure and be, as you said, be confused and tired and sleepy at times, change the schedule up. We got to figure things out. But to be out there with this beautiful, beautiful, I was going to say bucolic, picturesque surrounding is so natural. Again, back to reframing and reclaiming. I have to reframe it from, oh, I'm on vacation and reclaim the fact that I belong here. I belong in
Mm.
nature. I belong. These medicines actually heal naturally, and we're learning about these things. This is where I want to get more comfortable at being, and it helps me to be more honest with myself and my brothers at the same time. Somatic abolition.
Excellent.
Yeah. Nature is the school where you can never graduate, right? Like you can't. It will remind you of how small you are when you're standing next to a 360-year-old tree. It will remind you of how large you are when you're standing next to a parade of ants busy working in the middle of the day, in the middle of the night. It will remind you of how insignificant you are when the monkeys are throwing their leftover food at you, right? And so it's a school, it's a space where we're consistently learning about the divine. There's this terminology we learned this time around, Dr. Kelly, that you weren't able to participate this time around. Philodendrite, right? And philodendrites are the plants that live on other plants, on other trees, right? And they do so harmoniously. They're not there to take away anything from the tree, but they allow themselves to then cling on to something to then help them get to their destination, which is to bloom, which is to shine, which is to grow, right? And I look at that and then I see how we relied on each other throughout our time in Costa Rica, on how each one of us brought something different. But when we were in the rooms together, the men, when we were in the spaces together, we relied heavily on what someone else brought, an idea someone else shared, an experience someone else shared, an emotion someone was vulnerable enough to, to share and expose. we were all leaning on each other to then grow so much more than we would if we were to do it by ourselves. And there's this idea of how nature isn't in competition with each other. They're not competing with each other. They're supporting one another to where they can produce such biodiversity, right? To where you can see a yellow snake and then see a brown snake and then see a black snake right within 20 feet of each other. And they're the same species. It's like, what am I looking at? I'm looking at myself. I'm looking at a reflection of me because I can see myself in my brother. When I'm there with you, Sonny, I see your bright nature as a part of me. But when I'm there with another brother that's not quite as bubbly as you, I see myself in that individual as well. And I give to myself what I would give to me, you know? And so it allows me to be able to be harmonious in a way of receiving and giving without being depleted. Nothing in nature is starving, by the way. They're eating good out there, right? The sloths, their tummy full, they're sleeping on the coconut trees, right? The ants, they have this whole community underground that we have no idea about, right? All of the variety of species of birds, flowers, they're thriving. Why? Because they're not competing with each other. And so we're learning how to then mirror what we're seeing in real time. So I think that's just one of the beautiful experiences of being outside the country in Costa Rica, applying biomimicry, that's a mouthful as well.
Well, we do have two questions for you, and these are from Miles Robinson. So, how about if Matt, you take the first one? What do you foresee Black men's health to look like in future generations? Where are we going with Black men's health? And Sonny, if you could take, what does it mean to be a Black male, to be a Black man in 2025 and beyond? Very related, but I think your responses will be very, very helpful to everyone.
Yes, I love that question because that's a part of what I pride myself in being a mental health provider. I would love to see my career phased out. I would love for us to be so in tune to our wellness that there is no such thing as a therapist anymore. So that's what I see for Black men, that we got it. I got it. Right. And then I can give that to my son, and he can give that to his son. And so the balance will be seen greater and greater as the next generation doesn't have to deal with the trauma of the past because we're healing in real time. And so what I forecast is a space where we can do exactly what nature does, rely on each other in a healthy way, where uh it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's a space where what's that song called? I Need You to Survive, right? Where
Unity.
we actually live in that space where my brother is my keeper, right? Where I can have, Doc, this is an analogy for you, home court advantage everywhere I see a Black face. Everywhere I see a Black man, I can have home court advantage. He sees me, I see him, and automatically we're in sync with each other because I understand that he understands, and we can stand together in that understanding and make sure that we're well in that very space. That's what I forecast.
That is beautiful, and that is freedom. Sonny,
What does it mean to be a Black man in 2025? I'll tell you what it means, and I'll tell you what I hope it begins to mean. For me, what it means is unresolved issues and challenges. It means a pressure to be invisible at some times and then hyper visible at other times. It means having a script written for you that you're still trying to figure out. As an actor, my nightmare, many people have the nightmare of showing up at school naked, right? That's usually a deep seated fear of vulnerability. My nightmare is showing up on a stage and not having my lines and not knowing what to say, but having a live audience. And I feel that a Black man in America today, not all, but some and many, and I know I do, ebb and flow in it, is the experience of showing up and having people have certain expectations of you, and you're not sure what they want, and you're not sure of how you're supposed to perform because there have been so many expectations and tropes and stereotypes placed upon you that sometimes you'd rather just give up and walk away, which is why I so understand why so many of my Black male students and colleagues and friends would say, I'd rather not have the conversation, or I'd rather not give this speech or present because I don't know what you're going to think about me. And I've already lost before we started. While I don't believe that to be the absolute truth of their situation, I understand how they came to that conclusion. And I believe that it is incumbent upon Black men, those of us, especially like Matt and myself, who are breaking through the mold and seeking to be strong in our vulnerability and to be honest with ourselves and to brother with one another and to live out those words, Ubuntu, I am because you are. I think it's incumbent upon us to model that with our brothers and say, come on, man, come on, we got to give this a shot. And when you fall, and you will, I'll be there to pick you up. So, what it means to be a Black man today is to be in a world of uncertainty and a world of imminent and true threat and a world of possibilities. That if we will look up and start to hope in each other, in brotherhood, in ourselves, and our Creator, that we can achieve much more. I think sadly, we have not had a chance to grapple with and embrace our very humanity because our race has been placed upon us, our gender has been placed upon us in such fixed ways that we're not allowed to improv. I think sometimes a Black man today feels like there's a script that he doesn't know the lines to, and he's on the stage and he's expected to learn these lines when really the whole thing is improv, bruh. Throw the script away. See what happens. And some people are going to be with you and some people are not. And some people are going to come for you and some people are not. Some people are going to critique you, but you just watch those ones who stay. And when you are your true, most beautiful, brilliant self, what comes out of you will blow your own mind. And I'm excited to see that. As a teacher, I get to see that on a regular basis. I especially get excited when my young Black men come in there and they don't want to get eye contact and they don't want to be vulnerable and they don't want to share because they're not sure of how they'll be accepted. And they see this man who looks like he could be their uncle or their dad or their big brother say, I love you. I love you no matter what. Come on, let's do this. I'm going to laugh at you, laugh with you. We're going to laugh through it. We're going to laugh together. And there's this health and there's this strength. And I wish we could multiply that and expand that beyond the classroom, beyond Costa Rica, because we feel that same thing there. We don't take ourselves so seriously, but we do consider the impact that we're going to make when we get back to our families and our communities. We consider that seriously. And we know that the more we play with this, the more we operate in a way that is expectant and hopeful and accountable, the better we're going to do, right? And that just takes revelation. So uncertainty, but also some hope that I see rising up. That's what it means to be a Black man to me in 2025.
Wonderful, wonderful. We had a question come in. We spoke about this earlier, but I'd like for you to have your closing comments. I would like for you to also address this. But right now, I would love to hear if there's anything on your mind, any message that you haven't conveyed yet, to add that to your closing comments. David Daniels asked, can you speak about, again, this current environment, cultural and political, and how that impacts Black men in their psychosocial and physical health? And so, Dr. Kelly, how about if you go first, and then we'll close out with Mr. Jeanius, and we'll wrap up this amazing webinar on men's health.
Well, I think with the language of this current presidential administration and what I've seen at the federal level and just the trend toward conservatism in our society, I have seen an assumption on the part of the majority, especially the conservative majority, that we should all have it together and be good to go. You all have your lines. Let's go. Let's move forward. Pull up yourself by your bootstraps and figure things out. And what's not happened is a true reckoning, reconciliation, processing amongst Black men, especially where we are allowed to be vulnerable with each other and with others and heal and move forward. I'm a humanist in that sense. I want us to be all human and to be equal and nobody see color and be colorblind. Unfortunately, we have never really in this country dealt honestly and with true integrity and patience, dealt with the pain and the struggle that have come from systemic racism. And so with that said, I think that we are, it's a lovely country. I fought in the Air Force to honor this country, and it's a convoluted and confusing story, like every story. I'm not a perfect person. I don't serve a perfect nation, but I'm proud to be an American. And I know that's something that's not popular to a lot of folks, but I don't think that the current way that we're moving in America gives us space as men, especially Black men, to grow and to heal the way that we need to. And so I would like to see Black men and our communities stop and pump brakes wherever we can, creating systems and places and circles where we can connect and engage and slow it down. Even though I speak quickly, I think in a way that is about seeing people, about being present. And so what I think that the most important thing we can do, in addition to vote and in addition to being visible in the public sphere, in the civic sphere, in all respective ways, is to stop, be with each other, be present, love each other, allow each other to grow and to heal, ask for help, ask for patience, ask for space, and then give that to each other. Because if we don't start healing ourselves, the government's not going to do it, the politicians aren't going to do it. The places and spaces that were supposed to help to do that are being underfunded, cut, destroyed, and eliminated. So we all we got. So at this point, at the grassroots level, at our household, in our conversations like we're having now, we got to stop and see each other, breathe, and be together and build as strong a union as we can together that is accepting and loving and inclusive and empowering, so that we can start to build a network of healing and somatic abolition and of growth that cannot be stopped by any law or any protocol. I mean, since when has a law or even an institution of slavery or Jim Crow been able to stop our spirit or our joy? It's tempered it, it's channeled it, it's captured it in some ways, but I want us to see if we can take this joy and expand it together amongst one another, and then share it with the rest of the world and the country.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly.
My pleasure. Oh, you're muted, Matt.
Matt?
Sorry, I was just giving Dr. Kelly his flowers. I was saying how it's always good to see your face, and your words are like medicine to my soul, brother. Like, I love it. So thank you for sharing and being here in this space. Dr. David Daniels is one of the mentors and sponsors that I mentioned earlier, and he's on this call. I didn't even know. So, my good brother, thank you for being here. I think what has happened over the I can't even tell you how long, is that there has been a line drawn in the sand when it comes to politics that divides us as people of color, men specifically. You're either with or against. And I choose not to participate in that understanding. And I would ask more brothers to come to a space where we can understand each other, not agree. I don't have to agree with you, but I will choose to understand where you are and where you're coming from, which gives space for you in my life. I need you in my life, and I desire for you to be in my life. It doesn't matter your political views or stance. I know you're necessary for me to thrive in this country. And so what I would say is that be aware of how a stance that we take, whether it's this side or that side, then allows you to then see your brother and see him as a friend or foe. And then also see what it makes you feel internally. How do you live? How do you sleep at night with all of the turmoil that's around what's happening in politics? And so I turned it off, right? I used to be an avid fan of CNN, MSNBC. I can't watch because it makes me have enmity towards my own people. There's someone that's for this and there's someone that's against that, and then they have to clash, and then we're entertained by it. It's not entertainment, it's programming that allows us to then have anxiety, anger, sadness, and all these different emotions that we don't have an opportunity to process because you have to wake up and do it again the next day. So take a break. Take a break from it, reevaluate some of the stance we've taken that may not make sense for the greater good of our people, you know? And so I would say lead with love, right? And love has no boundaries, and love has no face, right? And love has no color. And so if you can find space to love, start with loving yourself. Start with understanding that you are worthy of love. You are worthy of joy. You are worthy of peace. And most importantly, you are worthy of healing. Dr. Joy DeGruy, in that same book, she said something about how we see each other and we question what the person is looking at. We ask, what are you looking at? Versus I see you, which is an affirmation. I see you exactly where you are, and I love you. I believe in you, right? I desire to spend time with you. I desire to learn from you. I desire to share with you, right? And so I see all of you, and I love you.
Thank you. Namaste. Namaste. Ubuntu. So I thank you for tuning in. And with all of the tools and resources and services available, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation, whether it's dancing, remember to have conversation. And that's what we did today. So I'm very, very grateful to these wonderful gentlemen. I'm honored to serve with them and share with them. Mr. Matt Jeanius, Dr. Sonny Kelly, thank you for this conversation around healing and hope in times of hatred. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for participating. Follow Race Realities on Instagram. You can visit our website, racerealities.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Blessings to you all.
Blessings. What a treat. Thank you all.